Hello and welcome to MOLA's 2020 Dia de los Muertos Festival. My name is Arturo Baez, and on behalf of the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, California, I'd like to thank you for joining us today as we learn more about this special tradition and give you a taste of Dia de los Muertos. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the event sponsors that made it possible to make this two-week event free of charge. Here's a brief welcome from a presenting sponsor, Hyundai.
Welcome to the 2020 Day of the Dead virtual celebration presented by Hyundai. We are thrilled to be a sponsor for this great event. We hope that you enjoy the beautiful traditions that make this annual celebration so special. Have a great day.
Additional support comes from the Kenneth T. and Eileen L. Norris Foundation, Bess J. Hodges Foundation, Arts Council for Long Beach, Robert Gumbiner Foundation, and the City of Long Beach. I'd like you guys to stick around toward the end. I have announcements regarding a Day of the Dead inspired costume contest and a chance to participate in a virtual altar. Our host for today is Arturo Enciso. Arturo is a baker from Leavened, California, that has called Long Beach his home for over 10 years. His early days in Long Beach were filled with music and community, being a part of grassroots organizations and events, and simply living the good life the city has to offer. As a self-taught baker for the last 7+ years, he's grown his hobby into a career with his business Gusto Bread, a panaderia orgánica on Redfield Row in Long Beach. The bakery uses only masa madre, which means sourdough, for making breads and pan dulces, embracing ancient knowledge and using only organic products. He believes that good food and bread provide a beautiful way for people to connect with one another, to traditions and wisdom of the past, and create community for a brighter future. Enjoy the program, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for making this possible. I'm Arturo Enciso, Gusto Bread. We are here in my home in Long Beach. This is where Gusto Bread started. In this living room area back here behind us. We won't go there to show you because now it's not a bakery anymore. So we've opened our bakery in Retro Row here in Long Beach just a couple of months ago. So yeah, me and my partner Anna, we are co-owners of Gusto Bread. And today we'll be walking you through a chocolate made with water, agua, and we'll be also talking about Pan de Muerto and exploring the many types of Pan de Muerto and the one that we make at Gusto Bread here in our bakery. So let's see if you can see my screen here. All right. So what is chocolate? Have you guys ever heard of cacao here? I don't know if you can see it. This is the cacao beans. So this is where chocolate starts from. It's a fruit. So it's dried out, fermented, and it has this skin, and that's where all chocolate starts from. And you can grind that and blend it until smooth, and that's what creates like chocolate discs. Like this is a really raw chocolate disc that's ground with cinnamon, canela, and sugar, and sometimes almonds, depending on different regions in Mexico or even Ecuador. A lot of places make these chocolate discs. So we'll be making it with these discs, which are very traditional, and just water. Another important tool is molinillo. So it's this wooden whisk, if you've ever seen one of those. It's just got these different carvings that allow the water to really blend that chocolate and whisk it until really fine and it's able to foam up too. So I have my water here. The recipe that I'd like to share with you includes our Daza chocolate. So this is one that we use at the bakery. Daza was one of the first importers of organic cacao into the United States, and they call it a Mexican style stone ground because I think of the volcanic stones they use that are from different parts of Mexico. So for example, they'll use a stone like this that has these different kind of like carvings in it. And that's how they'll grind the cacao beans like I showed you And when you put two together, you know, they'll have this machinery where you're using these volcanic stones, and then you get this really rustic chocolate. Okay, so the recipe includes, you have to have your water boiling, which mine's been on low, but it's ready to boil. It's like right there. I'm gonna bring it up. And the recipe is for 16 ounces of water. That's roughly 2 cups. And then 2 taza discs. Or you can also use, you know, other chocolate like abuelitas, or it's a common household one, also Ibarra. But if you do find this taza one, we have it at the bakery, you would use both discs. These are thinner discs than other chocolates, just so you'll see how this is one whole disc and this is 2. They're very different chocolates too when you look at them. Taza likes to grind theirs twice, so it's got an even smoother texture. So you can eat it as a chocolate too. I find that raw cacao is not a very good eating chocolate. It's not like your typical, you know, like smooth chocolate with a bite. Sometimes it's a little more mealy, but you can enjoy it like that. But typically you cook with this, you use it in a mole, or you're gonna make a drink out of it like we are. So once your water is really going, we'll just click on this here. So we use both this. So it's 16 ounces of water and then about 77 grams of your chocolate, or 2 discs of taza. You can also grate it. Some people like to grate it. I typically would just snap it in 2. See how that snaps really easily. This water's not quite ready, so I'm going to give it a minute. And while that's heating up, I can talk a little bit more about what gusto bread is, for those who are not familiar with us. So we are an organic panaderia, is what I like to call it, and we focus only on masa madre as our natural yeast. So, you know, that takes twice as long to make breads like in that fashion, because you're not using commercial yeast or even fresh yeast. This is literally wild yeast that you're fermenting from the flour itself. So why would someone want to take twice as long to make a bread? Well, it really is more of a healthful thing. It's also, sourdough is more healthy because it digests the grain a little better, so it's easier on yourself, for your body to digest the grain, and it'll keep the bread longer too. So nowadays people use tricks like they're called like mejorantes, or dough conditioners. Those are artificial stabilizers, so it makes bread last longer. So the old-fashioned way was just to do sourdough bread, you know, just do a good old fermentation. So, okay, my water is boiling now. I'm gonna start throwing these discs in. And you can't really see it boiling from there, but you can probably see steam coming out. I'm gonna slowly stir it. You don't have to use a clay pot too. You can use, you know, whatever pot you have at home. Just sometimes if your pot's really big, and then your whisk is you know, not reaching very high, not that much water, it's better to use a smaller pot basically, because a large wide pot, you have to fill it with a lot more water to actually get it to whisk. So it's going, and you have to just start whisking pretty vigorously so you get that smooth drink. You can turn it on low to a little like the medium, I mean. That way it doesn't burn your hands in the steam that starts to rise. But you probably can't see it from this screen, unfortunately, but I'm seeing it foam up a lot, so that's really nice. That's a good sign. That's how a lot of people judge chocolate, you know, chocolate drink. It's like, how much foam does that have? It means you're whisking a lot of air into it and it's getting really frothy. Alternatively, you can do this in a blender. So you can just throw this hot water with the discs, same recipe, just do it in a blender. You know, it doesn't have to be this way if you don't have the means, or would rather. It's definitely more efficient to just put it in the blender. But there's something special about getting your hands warm and doing it this old-fashioned way. So I'll try to show you here, like how it's coming together. Find my, I don't burn my hands here, but try to show you some of the, no, you can't probably see on the froth in there. Just a bunch of steam. You see some bubbles? All right. So there's our chocolate. So yeah, let's serve a little bit. Slowly ladle it or pour it from your container into your taza. I'm just using these traditional ones here. Yeah, it's best served immediately. Don't let it sit in the pot. It'll settle and then you'll have to whisk it again. So you can slowly ladle it. And just enjoy a sip sooner than later, because once it settles, you're gonna have to kind of stir it again. So cheers. Really sweet, and you can sweeten it to taste. You know, if you feel like one chocolate you buy is too strong, maybe you want it sweeter, just kind of add a little sugar at more at a time. This one that I use is the vanilla blend, so they grind vanilla with it. So this one's definitely a little sweeter than I prefer mine, so I would probably use more cacao in mine. I would do the opposite. I'd add more cacao and then versus chocolate, or more. We have one at the shop that's the puro, which is like 70%. That one's got that really bitter kind of flavor that I like. It really wakes me up in the morning. All right, and there's different molinillos too. So these whisks, you've probably seen the different shapes. It's really just a preference. This one's rounded, and it doesn't have these sort of carvings like this one that's hollow. It's just preference. I've found. You can find these at a lot of Mexican grocers, swap meets, all sorts of places. I got these online from a website called Mexico 1492, I believe. They've got really beautiful artisan products from Mexico, and that's why I got these. I wanted to test them. All right, getting a little feedback here, but I think I'm okay now. So yeah, that's el chocolate, and let's get into a little bit of the pan de muerto here. I'll show you the chocolate disc right next to it. I don't know if you can see that very well. So this is one variation of pan de muerto. This is the kind that we're making at our bakery. It's a little more like a personal size one, I like to call it. You'll definitely see many sizes at many bakeries throughout Mexico and even here in Los Angeles. Different size ones. And there's a lot of mythology around this bread. And since I've been learning about it, I've learned many different things. There's no direct correlation between maybe the indigenous practices to this pan de muerto today. The only thing that I would say kind of stands the same is that bread is always seen as an offering. That's always stayed the same, and it's something you leave on your altar for Dia de los Muertos, or to remember a dead one or your ancestors, just to give them something sweet and let them know you're thinking about them. That's kind of how this bread is shared today, and you can still enjoy it too. It's not only an offering. And it's said that the symbolism of this bread, there's many beliefs, but the one that I've heard is one that I'll share that I've heard is that this round shape represents the universe, and this could represent the four directions. Another one is said that it also represents the tears, the lágrimas, or the huesos. This could sometimes also seen as the skull, and these other ones around it, the other bones that represent, the dead one. So yeah, there's many. That's just one variation throughout the different regions in Mexico. There's other kinds. There's Oaxaca, they have a different one where it's shaped more of like an oval, and they actually split it down the middle and insert like a ceramic doll figure, like a head. So that's another version you'll see. It's just a very, very, so much rich history with this bread throughout Mexico. But we like to make it with this and this shape. And typical of this shape, people will use orange and anise, which is what we do at the bakery, but we do orange zest. We will get the zest of fresh oranges, and then we'll get whole fennel, and we will then grind that fresh as well to get that really strong aromatic flavor into the bread, as well as with masa madre. We're incorporating that. So for example, to start our dough, we'll be planning it 2 days before. We'll have to mix the starter so that it's really active and healthy, the madre, and then the next day we'll come in and mix that madre with the fresh flour, wheat flour. We use a blend of bread flour, California whole wheat flour. We use farm eggs, water, the fennel, the orange zest, and a little bit of sugar and salt. That's all that this pan de muerto has, and that gives it its really rich aromatic flavor. The way I describe it to a lot of our customers, or when people are new to it, is it's a very aromatic bread. You bite into it and it just kind of takes over your like nasal cavities. It's just kind of hitting you with all these like fresh aromas of ground fennel and the citrus. So it's a very refreshing type of bread to eat during this time. It's kind of a breath of fresh air, really. So sometimes it feels like you clean your teeth, even like it just feels that refreshing, It's really nice bread to eat. So that's a little bit of the symbolism of this bread. I've been making pan de muerto for about 3 years now. This is my 3rd year. This is a seasonal bread also. You won't see it year round at bakeries, because it comes around this time of the pan de muerto, and each bakery will have their season. Ours, I guess we don't have an official start date at our bakery, but I think this month we started like 2nd week of October or so, and we're going to be making that through November 1st. I think each bakery kind of makes their own season for it, but definitely after the other muertos, you don't see it much anymore. You have to wait till next year to find this bread. I love the modernization that many bakeries are doing with this bread too, throughout Mexico and even here. It's becoming a more popular bread. I really love seeing that's getting more attention, because it really is a special bread, very beautiful bread, and a lot of modern approaches. People are getting creative. People are doing different flavors, like not only limiting themselves to orange and anise or orange and fennel. People are doing different sugars. Like I've seen like charred corn, and then that's ground with the sugar and dusted on top, so it'll almost look like this really black sugary bread. And I've seen raspberry flavored ones. People will even cut it down the middle and make like a sandwich with it. Also, people are injecting it with like creams or Nutella and stuff. So it's definitely taking on lots of different forms this day and age. And it's just beautiful to see so many bakers keeping this tradition alive and even making their own interpretation of it. I think definitely deserves that more and more. The special bread. For example, in our bakery, because this is such a long process to make, we're always like rushing. You'll get it warm typically at our bakery because we do it right at 8. We're literally pulling them out for everyone. It's one of those breads in the season. It's like we're all the bakers are on board. We're all rushing to get this bread out the door because it's very involved. It's very handmade bread, honestly, more than others. Because each vessel has to be hand formed. These little symbols, we have to roll those out each one at a time. And if you're making 100 of those, you're going to make like 400 of these vessels because you have to. Each one gets 2. Or no, like 200 double. It's just a really labor intensive bread. Honestly, it's kind of good that it's only seasonal because I think we'd get worn out as bakers doing it daily. But the fact that it's put in an altar, people will still use it to remember their loved ones. It's a really special and meaningful bread. You don't see a lot of breads like that. I think that can only exist in our culture today, and then here in Mexico, and when people celebrate Dia de los Muertos, it's a beautiful thing to keep alive, I think. And my dad, when I asked him about this bread, he grew up in Mexico City. So what he remembers is definitely seeing this bread around a lot, and his involvement for Dia de los Muertos as a kid was always to go in to clean the tombs and kind of repaint them. And so that was, not every region in Mexico knows this bread. My mom's from Chihuahua, northern Mexico. It's not a bread she grew up with. Dia de Muertos, not so much a holiday she was a part of. So it's not, everyone in Mexico is honoring this celebration or practice this holiday. But in my dad's region, I had to discover that, and start asking my dad when I became a baker. I was learning that it was in his region, this bread that was eaten. So, when he tasted ours, it really reminded him of his childhood, and that was special. And it's what kept me kind of more interested in making it and exploring more and more the rich histories and talking to other bakers throughout Mexico and how they view this bread. Yeah, it's really special. Any questions going on?
Yeah, did you talk about the histories that we were finding about like different, like the indigenous immigrant breads and everything?
No, so I kind of skipped over it, but like I was talking about, there's no direct correlation between the indigenous people of Mexico and then today, how Pan de Muerto how it exists or how it's seen in the world. It's seen to have come from back then, but wheat isn't native to Mexico, orange isn't native to Mexico, anise, or fennel, those are not. But I would say the symbolism is, that idea of an offering is very Mexican, very indigenous practice. But I think the stories are in Mexico, the natives or the regions where they would have like the offerings. It was really, the sacrifices that they would carry out, and there's these intense stories, really intense stories of, warriors or princesses getting their hearts torn out, and then that being put in an amaranth bowl of seeds, and then that being offered to the gods. So that's sort of some of the wild symbolism that it probably carries from and mixed with like so much Mexican breads. It's got a lot of history, but it's really fascinating, in that sense.
Hi, Arturo.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a few questions, and I might be getting left out. How did you start making bread?
So
What was it about bread?
about milk versus water.
Arturo's asking a question. How did I start making bread? Yeah, so I'm a self-taught baker. I taught myself in 2013. Only, I guess, by chance, I moved into this property here in Long Beach that had this wood oven made out of clay, or like adobe. And the homeowner who owned the house, he was renting the apartment to us in the back. We shared the garden with him, so he had this oven constructed there in the middle of the garden. And I had no interest in baking or cooking prior to that. But when I moved into the house and, I was seeing this oven every day walking by, it just fascinated me and I kind of was called to it and I wanted to learn to use it. So I literally got some firewood and started stoking that oven and teaching myself through books and through trial and error, just kind of going for it. Yeah.
That's so I grew up in Mexico, and my grandfather, he owned a bakery, and I actually got to work there as a child, and we also we only used like those fire ovens. um and then
Mm.
yes, around Dia de los Muertos was when we would get the most clients lining up our door um to buy bread. Besides Pan de Muerto, what else do you feel like is very popular around this time?
Around this time, um, our panaderia is very unique. So I would say my approach is different. It's not your typical panaderia. We don't have like everything. We do have conchas, we do have cookies, but not like the typical cookies of Mexico. We do spelt cookies, like a different grain. So I think every bakery is unique, but I think the pan de muerto around this time is definitely the only one that stands out to me. And chocolate, you'll see a lot more chocolate being drank and
Yes,
passed around.
yes, for
I'm
sure.
sure.
Yeah, especially with the times changing, being a little colder, the stuff is perfect. Do you have a favorite bread that you make? I know personally when I worked in the bakery, I love conchas, but I mean, it sounds so basic, but there's really nothing like a fresh concha right out of the oven. Well, not right out of the oven, but when it's super soft and at its peak. What do you think? What's your favorite one?
Yeah, I have to say, my favorite bread has also become a concha. It's sort of been, I'll be honest. As a kid, that wasn't one of my favorite breads personally. I like the bolillos with like cream cheese and jalapeno. That's definitely a more modern Mexican bread, I think too. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's
That was
delicious.
something. Yeah, I would get tons of those as a kid. But I didn't go for the concha as much. But now that since I'm exploring this at our bakery, these other techniques and these old traditions, breads I grew up with, the concha was one that I needed to like really start exploring. And we started with that one before we got to this good pan de muerto dough. I started with getting our concha dough to be the right texture that I was looking for. Also using natural ingredients, it wasn't easy because, and still today, I might hear some people think it's a little dense. Personally, it's a lot to use masa madre and to get an airy texture. It's a very challenging art form. It's also lost knowledge. Not a lot of bakeries do this anymore. So if we just did yeast like every other bakery, it would be almost. It's very predictable, very easy to do. But when you're using this very live culture of wild yeast like masa madre, there's so much to learn, and I'm still amazed like how they grow. We start like this, and then once we put in the oven, they're these giant conchas. So that's become one of my favorite breads now because when I eat one of ours, I feel like I'm having a really good breakfast. It's very filling, and I don't remember the conchas of my childhood feeling like that. They were a little more airy, and you'd have to eat like maybe 5 of them to feel like you felt full or something.
I'm not sure if have you gone over what exactly is masa madre? People are very interested to know what that means. Masa madre.
Yeah, yeah. So masa madre. Sorry, I did kind of skip over that. But masa madre is that's just what in Spanish speaking uh, countries or languages we call sourdough. So you might have heard sourdough or sourdough starter. In France, they call it leaven. Um, it's just the word for that means sourdough starter. So, and I guess another translation, if you translate in English, it would mean like mother dough, which is interesting because in Italy they call it that too. They call it like madre. They just call it madre or biga madre or something like that. So it's like a mother dough because it's literally giving life to your next day's doughs. It's like if you keep one batch of it, you use it for the next day. And that's a very ancient knowledge for bakers. Nowadays, a lot of bakeries have sacrificed that and they get a pinch of yeast and they just throw that in dough. It's not the same though. The results are very, very different.
Yeah, yeah. Someone that grew up in a bakery eating, not traditional, but like the way that my grandfather learned it, using those specific. I'm very curious still to try your recipes. Even they're probably similar, but just the that you use masa madre probably does make all the difference. People are also interested in knowing if there's like a specific book that talks about the history of pan dulce or something that you would like to recommend that talks more about this knowledge.
No, I haven't found a book that directly speaks to that. I'm sure I'm still on the journey myself to try to find something like that. I'm sure there's got to be stuff published out there. Um, but no, I can't say a direct book that I know of that will speak about a lot of the pan dulces and stuff. It's really just online where I found a lot of different articles, even just YouTube, bloggers or people on YouTube sharing history they found. That's where I've learned a lot of some of these, like the breads or some of the myths around them. So I kind of do
Cool.
that kind of searching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. People are also interested. They're very interested in the masa madre idea, and so they want to know like how much percent of masa madre is in your pan de muerto?
That's a good question. I don't have my recipe in front of me, but uh, if the masa madre, to use it in the bread, it's like I was saying, it's a very involved process, and each dough kind of behaves differently. But I think because ours goes through a very long fermentation time, like for example, when we mix it the 2 days before the starter, the next day we mix the dough, and then that next morning we'll shape it by hand and then proof it and bake it. So that's a long time for it to be fermenting. So we use, I want to say it's like about 15% madre in relation to the total flour weight. So if you made, if you had a kilo of flour, it'd be 15% of that relating to that flour.
Cool. Yeah, you got a lot of compliments for your cooking ware there. Lots of traditional stuff, and so people want to know what kind of pot do you use to make the chocolate? Is that clay or wood?
Yeah, I used clay. So the lateral, I'll show you. You can also get these at a lot of Mexican grocers. Definitely, there's some sketchy ones, so I would do more research because people say that a lot of these will have lead. So sometimes you'll see them stamped at the bottom. They say sin plomo or no lead, lead free. Look for that because it's true. Sometimes some of these are more ornamental. They're not meant to be put over fire, and so they might contain like a glaze with lead on it. So you don't want to be consuming that. But yeah, look for real traditional ones or unglazed ones, or one that has a marking that it's lead free. So yeah, I've just collected a lot throughout the years. I love cooking with clay. It's something very special. I guess I just like these more handling things with care. I've been practicing that. That's a big part of making bread. But this is one of my favorite ones too. I'll show you this pot. I cook rice in here a lot. This one I got at a thrift store. It's a really beautiful condition. It has some stampings on there. I don't know if you can see it, but see the marks from the fire. Yeah, with clay, you have to be very careful.
Right, of course, always. I'm sure people are listening to this and getting really hungry at home, like myself. I eat hot chocolate, pan de muerto. All of this is just making my gut go crazy. So people might wonder, like, what else could they use instead at home? They might want to try this. Are there things that go like use from home?
Yeah, so you don't have to stick to clay. Obviously, that's just a traditional, very primal thing. But you can use any pot. You can use a stainless steel pot. In fact, what was the other one? This one. This is one I've used before too. It's just like an enamel pot. See how it's kind of tall and smaller? That's a good size for a chocolate drink too. I would not use something like wide, like very wide at all. You want something to fit like a whisk in. Something that's about, the diameter is about, I don't know, like no more than 6 inches wide. Probably is a good standard.
Cool. Cool. It's really interesting that you have this bakery based on like traditional processes and then traditional bread, but you're always finding new ways of giving it a more modern spin, so keeping it like something that makes it specific to gusto bread. Can you talk about like maybe a couple things that are only found in gusto bread?
I would say, yeah, to be a bakery, to claim that you're a bakery that's using 100% sourdough or 100% masa madre, that in itself is a very challenging thing. that's something that that we're going to stick to. That's something that I really enjoy doing. I love the challenge of it, to recreating something. It just feels like you're tapping into like ancient knowledge and applying that to today's world, and again, like I said, even though it takes twice the amount of time or something, to me, I don't think about that. I get very lost in it, and to me, I find it very rewarding to then at the end of the day get a bread that's made in this fashion that just tastes amazing. It has a great chew to it. It'll keep better just than like a normal yeasted bread, because it's just made a very natural way. I don't know. That's kind of the explanation. But we try to improvise a lot of different breads. We have something called the nixtamal queen. So that, for example, is something that I started exploring when I was learning to cook maize. Like nixtamal, if I would start with, you can't just crack corn and then turn that into a tortilla dough. You have to cook it in like an alkaline solution, like what's called cal, to then grind that, and then you have masa to make tortilla. So it turns into a dough ball. That's how you get masa for tortillas, and that's another very rich tradition. A lot of history there in Mexico, of course, with tortillas and masa. So when I was teaching myself to make masa, the corn dough, I wanted to apply that to our bread dough. So I saw it as an ingredient, as an opportunity to kind of get a flavor of tortilla in our bread dough. I kind of was like imagining those flavors, like, oh, what if you got this bread and it just hits you with this aroma of like fresh tortillas, So I like at our bakery. I would say that's pretty unique. I don't hear. I've never heard of a bakery doing that. Actually, I think I took a lot of pleasure of doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything here in Long Beach, at least. Could we expect a similar thing for like the Rosca de Reyes? Do you guys make anything like that?
Oh, rosca, yeah. So rosca is another bread that we kind of comes after Pan de Muerto in the season. That's very Christmassy, or Dia de los Reyes, around Christmas time, January, you start to see this. It's a very similar dough, like it's going to be very soft, but it also has fruits incorporated into it. I made the Rosca de Reyes last year. So I'm really looking forward to doing it again. I'm working on it with our bakers right now. We're trying to get this dough right again and trying to, make it. But I think one thing we're finding is because we're more specialized, we don't make like your typical large versions of it for like a whole family. We're kind of exploring making personal size for people to try. It's kind of an introduction, or saying like, hey, because we get people from all backgrounds coming to our bakery, and maybe it's a big commitment for them to buy this big bread they know nothing about. So we just we kind of make a smaller version for you to kind of experience. That's kind of a part of, I guess, Gusto Bread's offerings too.
Cool. Do you feel like learning this, like, for example, I wish that I had picked up the skills that my grandpa and my uncles have in terms of like baking bread. Do you feel like learning this has tied you or brought you closer to your roots or your heritage?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think through food, you realize who you are a lot of times. You realize the flavors. I think that's something I found, I can say for sure for myself, is when I became a baker. I think I was learning very basic recipes in the beginning, very just sourdough breads, which were very Eurocentric, I would say, I guess, like, from French. And it didn't really feel like me, but I was also kind of, it felt weird to me to try to make like a boli or something, because I was kind of stuck to the sourdough process, and it wasn't so easy to just translate what I was doing to then apply it to making the breads I grew up with. I think I had to go through this whole process of learning technique, learning different traditions, and then kind of revisit breads I grew up with. Is where I'm kind of at now with this, revisiting all these breads and flavors that I grew up with, and applying them to everything I've learned along the way. So
cool.
Yeah.
So I know your bakery just opened in August. Is it possible that somewhere down the line you're going to start teaching others how to use this process, because it's very unique, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in learning?
Yeah, definitely. We used to do workshops here actually at the cottage here at this house. We actually had a lot of them booked before COVID too. Unfortunately, we had to cancel all of those, not only because of COVID, but we were just so busy to get our bakery off the ground and to get our daily operations there. So it's not so easy to do our workshops anymore, although I'd love to bring them back. Honestly, I'm working on trying to just pitch a book idea. So I'm working on a book myself to try to publish our recipes and other findings and just share. Yeah, hoping to put like a Gusto bread book out there someday soon.
I'm
That's
sure
my
people
goal.
will love that after tasting your bread. I mean, you've only just started, but I'm hearing such good things about you all over the place in the community. I heard that you're gonna have a special Pan de Muerto this week. Am I correct?
Yeah, so this week, for those that are in Long Beach area, you might know of MOLA, Museum of Latin, Lola, sorry, I confused those earlier too. So Lola, we're doing a collaboration with Lola too, which is they're on Retro Road too, same street as us in on 4th Street, a couple blocks from us. But they were one of the first like Mexican restaurants there on 4th Street, and they've been there for a long time. I'm not sure, maybe over almost 10 years, if not 10 years. And yeah, thankfully Luis and his wife Brenda, who've taken over the business, reached out to us not too long ago and invited us to collaborate with them on an idea he wanted to. As Latino owners, we're trying to just collaborate on sharing the cultures of the Muertos and collaborating on a sort of just event for that. So we're going to be offering a chocolate Pan de Muerto chocolate version, as I was talking about. I mentioned earlier these different variations. Last year I explored one with cacao powder and cacao wafers in the dough, so it kind of melts like this like fudgy sort of Pan de Muerto. That's a special one that I kind of kept in my recipe book, and now that we have the baker, I'm opening it up again, and especially for Luis, who it was a perfect opportunity to collaborate with them. And so what we're doing is the first 40 people to buy this chocolate pan de muerto at our bakery will receive a voucher on Wednesday from Lola's to use on your meal, a discount on the meal. I think that's one of the fun things they're offering. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Now, this is something that keeps coming up, and people are still very interested. And you might have answered this, but you can just keep it brief if you like. Is the sourdough a traditional method, or is this something that you're doing, a new twist?
Is it traditional to Mexican bread?
Yes. Is it a traditional method for Mexican bread, or is it something that you've adopted and used it for your own stuff?
Again, what I'm finding, yes, I think sourdough is the only way before yeast. So yeast is a very modern invention that was made in, the 1900s. I want to say early 1900s. So before that, everything was sourdough. Or brewer's yeast. People were getting from breweries like the malts or the yeast from them, and putting that in dough. That was the only way you could really make bread back in the day. So using yeast is a very modern invention. So think about that. Bread's been around for much longer than that. So in Mexico, it's definitely more recent. Like I was saying, it's not a native ingredient.
Right.
But with colonization, they brought wheat before the 1900s. So yeah, I want to say, in a way, yeah, it is traditional to Mexico as well as all over the world. Sourdough is a tradition.
Cool. So you're bringing it back. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we didn't do that in my grandfather's bakery, but maybe before he started doing that, it was probably being done that way. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that I know in Mexico, I'm sure there's lots of bakeries doing sourdough now. There's much younger bakers like myself who are kind of fascinated by the subject, and we want to kind of explore the past in a way because again, as bakers, you can taste the difference. You can really see or how healthful it is. You'll feel better eating it too. Like myself, I don't think I'd be the same baker if I was making yeast bread. No offense to yeast breads and all that. It's just really, it's for me, it feels more natural. I like to personally try to eat more natural things. So, it's you feel more healthy in the end of the day, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, that might be a good thing for me because I love bread. I love pan dulce, and I know that if I'm not careful, I can kill a whole like dozen by myself. So maybe I should start going to you guys and start eating something healthier. Um, well, yeah, it's awesome that you bring that back. And it sounds very delicious. Someone I think described as your conchas being very, very fluffy and soft in the inside, something that just doesn't happen with other bakeries. So I am very
Yeah,
interested in trying that.
yeah. I
Um,
hope a lot of listeners today can come check us out if you haven't already. Um, Again, it's a lot of hard work for any bakery to be making bread day in and day out. And on top of that, what we're doing, this sourdough is just a very challenging thing every day for us, but it's something that's very rewarding at the same time for us. So we're trying to make the best bread we can every day.
Here's another question about the pan de muerto, and maybe you might know, maybe you might not. What the original pan de muerto, would it have been baked in a communal sort of firewood oven?
So the unique thing about bakers is that yes, and back in the day, there was really just in villages and pueblos, there was one or two, a couple of bakers, and only the reason is to have an oven meant you like a lot. That's a very big task to have an oven because then you were baking for the whole community. So yeah, ovens were always communal. So there's a lot of stories of there's like one baker in town with this large oven, and even a family could prepare the dough and you take it to the baker to bake it. So that's kind of the relationship that people used to have to bakers in the past. Like you didn't always get your bread necessarily from the baker. You could, but you also could take your dough there and then he would bake it or she would bake it. And that was that's a beautiful thing that you don't see a lot of anymore either.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. Just having
Mhm.
community and bread sounds amazing to me.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think we're getting close to the end, and there's something that's on everyone's mind right now. Do you think that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, and where did you get your shirt?
Right. Yeah. I had to wear the shirt with the Dodgers playing right now, but I think they're going to win. Yes. I think LA is time to shine right now. Um,
True, true.
yeah, I got this shirt from Pizzanista. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I think they're an
Yes.
LA pizza company. They had one in Long Beach, a location, but they closed, unfortunately. I think just before COVID. I'm not sure why or what happened, but I think their LA location is still operating. But yeah, I saw this shirt there, and I just had to get it.
Cool. Cool. And then last question. When you first did your first spread, and that well, I believe it was here in your home. Was it pan dulce, or what bread was it?
When I made the
Your
first bread,
first spread, yes.
my very first bread when I learned to bake in 2013. No, that was the very first bread I learned to bake was called the pan au levain. Pan au levain. I'm not doing it justice. I'm trying to speak French. It's like a French bread, which
Right.
essentially means bread with leaven. So bread made with starter or bread made with madre. So it's just very generic term, but that's what it was. It was just this bread made with sourdough starters, and it's really balanced. It's not like if you learn about sourdough bread here in the States, typically people look to San Francisco, and so we know San Francisco sourdough, San Francisco bread is a lot of those terms you hear for bread, sourdough bread here. But pan au levain is nothing like that, and I think that's what I found fascinating is that pan au levain is very balanced, even though it's made with sourdough. I guess the technique is that you get it to taste very like the grain itself and not overpowering, not like actually acid or not actually sour. Um, I think that's what I know. Again, it started my journey is why it fascinated me so much. Is like you could use sourdough or madre to get a bread that didn't taste sour. And personally, I know people out there that really love those strong San Francisco sour flavors. I think there's definitely a time and place for it, but I think when you want something that tastes just more like sweet or aromatic, sometimes those sourdough flavors will get in the way. So it takes a lot of skill and patience to get it to taste neutral and blend in with every other thing going on in your bread. So I think that's why, again, sourdough kind of started my baking journey, and I don't think I'll ever stop baking with sourdough.
Well, thank you so much for this today. Your presentation has been lovely. I bet a lot of people are hungry right now and can't wait to dig into your bread. Again, your shop can be found on Retro Row in Long Beach. That's on 4th Street. You guys can look that up, Retro Row in Long Beach, and that's where they'll find you there. Would you like to give out some handles, Instagram handles, or website, or your time, your store hours, or when they can find you there? I'm sure people are going to be lining up after this.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't found our bakery, or you're curious to find us or stay in touch with us, we're at our Instagram is at Gusto Bread. So GUSTOBREAD, no space, just Gusto Bread. Find us there on Instagram, on Facebook. You can join our newsletter. We send one out every week or so, where we'll sometimes announce specials that we're doing special breads, special events. We do a delivery system throughout Long Beach too on Thursdays. So there's all sorts of news we can send out to you to email too if you'd like to sign up on our website. Our website also has our hours. So our hours right now are 5 days a week, Wednesday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That may change. This is only our second month, but for now, that's working really well for us. We're able to get a break after all this, so much labor we're putting into this. It's really, we get a chance to recharge. So yeah, please stay in touch. Visit our website for more info, gustobread.com. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yes,
thank
everyone
you,
that sticked around, thank you so much for joining us today. I have a couple of announcements regarding a couple of things we're doing at Mola right now. The first one is you guys have a chance to join us for a virtual altar. We invite you to be part of this year's altar installation created by artist Nuaj Lemuan or Juan Silveiro. You can share an image of a loved one along with their name, date of birth, and death, and a message and your contribution will be included in a virtual altar. Send submission to DOD_2020@mola.org, and you can also participate in the prize drawing sponsored by Hyundai. Another one is you can upload a photograph to Instagram of you and your Day of the Dead inspired costume using the hashtags DODMola and DOD Hyundai to participate in the prize drawing for the best Day of the Dead costume. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today, and please go to themola.org. You can find our other Day of the Dead programming on there. Tomorrow we're going to have a fun DJ set. It's going to be Day of the Dead inspired, and it's going to be fun. So thanks again for everyone who joined us, and we'll see you soon. Good night.